All right, welcome back to the channel. We're going to talk about reversing diabetes. So today is going to be episode 2. I did get a little bit of feedback from my wife of I was using my hands too much and putting up fingers and everything. So for her and her friends, this isn't episode 1 anymore. We've moved on to episode 2. So let's go back 20 years. I was diagnosed with diabetes. I had some numbness in my feet, and living in Canada, went into the doctor, and they did some tests, and lo and behold, my blood sugar was through the roof. So 20 years to this year. So prior to that, my wife's mother, we were dating at the time. She noticed that I was fat. I was probably like 300 plus pounds at the time and sweating all the time. And she said, "Gee, John, you sweat a lot. We should take your sugars." So I'm like, okay, whatever this voodoo is, let's do it. So when she did, my sugars were 19. Now that's the Canadian level. When you convert it to the US figure, it's more like 342, which is friggin' sky high. And she said that at the time, "John, this is really high." And I said, "Well, we just had ice cream, and I was always eating junk and stuff." So, and that was the end of that until 5 years later when three, 4 years later when I went to the doctor with my numbness in my feet. So it was probably going on a lot longer than 24 years. Just didn't know it. So immediately they put me on metformin and then Januvia, and they combined it and put it into what's called Janumet, so you don't feel so bad taking just one pill instead of 2 pills, right? So, and then moved on to Farxiga, and Jardiance is basically the same thing. It just depends on the drug company and which one it covers. And then most recently, probably about a year-ish, on Mounjaro. I did start on Ozempic, or not Ozempic, yeah, Ozempic, and it was horrible. It didn't feel good. I was starting to lose my mind a little bit, which my wife will tell you I do from time to time anyway. But yeah, I had to get off that stuff, so we changed over to Mounjaro, and I feel normal. Well, and again, remember, on September the 2nd, I stopped taking my medication. So it is 1 month later and still no medication. So, so fast forward, let's go 5 years from the time I was diagnosed 15 years ago. I had a chest infection, and I also had a sciatic nerve. So I went to see the doctor, and they prescribed doxycycline and meloxicam. And it was around my birthday because I can remember we were having cake. And it was my birthday, so I'm having a big piece of cake. I do like cake. And I took my sugars about an hour and a half later, and they were 6. So at that time, my sugars normally ran somewhere around the 12 range, so in Canada. So when you convert that is like 216, which is pretty high. When I took my sugars after eating the cake, it was 6, which converts to a 108, which is normal. So I looked at it and I said, I'm going to have another piece of cake. So I proceeded with cutting myself another piece of cake, and took my sugars again probably 2 hours after that. They were still a 6. Well, the next day I had crunchy bars, which are chocolate bars, O. Henry's. I was eating all the junk I could find, because for 2 weeks in a row, my sugars were at 6. They never went down below. They never went up. Might have been 6.1, 6.2, but it's hovered at 6. And then 2 weeks later, back up to 12. So, I talked to my doctor about it. They've never heard anything like that. It's never happened. So I kind of boiled it down to it's an infection. I have to cure this infection. If I can cure this infection, I can cure my diabetes. So then I started researching what natural element is like a antibiotic, because no doctor is going to prescribe you 60 days of antibiotics. They just won't. So I found oil of oregano, and at first I was putting it in capsules and it was burning, and it was just horrible. And then I found these, they're called enteric coated by Now, and got them on Amazon. We moved to the US, got them on Amazon. And I was taking a pretty high dose. So I was up to about 12 of these caplets a day, and they're enteric coated, so they go through the stomach and they don't cause any issues. Well, I was working outside one day, and it's kind of funny. I didn't know what happened. I felt like I got bit by something, and the skin kind of peeled up. So I picked it off. A couple days later, like 4 days later, again, here's the hands. 4 days later, I started to get, the pain started moving up my arm. And I went to the doctor, and they said, looks like you got bit by a brown recluse, but you know, if that was 4 days ago, your finger should be almost pretty much falling off right now, because they cause necrosis, and it's horrible. Google it, brown recluse. Gave me some antibiotics, and it went away, but I didn't tell them that I was already on a high dose of oil of oregano. So then let's fast forward a little bit. Lived in Tokyo for 2 years, and that's when I got to really mess around with a lot of different diets. And we'll talk about that in the next episode. So when I came back from Tokyo, I'd run out of blood pressure medication. We had a friend coming from Canada, and normally I'd run out of my Advil cold and sinus, my Canadian version, because it's more powerful than the US version. So I asked her to bring me some down. Not taking my blood meds probably for 2 months at that point, and then I was congested, popped an Advil cold and sinus. Normally I pop 2, popped 1. Ended up in the hospital with a mild heart attack. Normally I'd take 2 of them. If I had taken 2 of them, I wouldn't be here today telling you my story. So that event really put me on the path to, you need to lose weight, you need to take care of yourself. And my ADHD hyperfocus really kicked in. How do I do all this stuff? How do I lose the weight? A lot of different diets. In the next episode, we'll talk through those. What are the most effective ones? I lost 60 pounds. 10 of it was Mounjaro, right? I instantly lost that 10 pounds, and then it stuck. And then for months, I couldn't move past that without trying some different types of diets. And we'll talk through those ones. And then, the different kind of supplements that I've been taking. And we'll talk about all those as well. Which ones would I keep taking? Which ones are, you're wasting your money on. And then, so we'll hopefully drop that video in the next 4 days or so. I'll be on vacation, and then when I come back, I'll do the final one, what everybody wants to hear. How did you reverse it, right? 30 days, still no medication. I looked at my G7 Dexcon this morning. I'm still 97% in range, and I am kind of eating crappy, which I shouldn't be. It's almost like if you have a broken leg and you can walk on it, you shouldn't go and do a marathon the next day. So more to come. Stay tuned.